and welcome to Pattern Niche on YouTube. This is a community-driven sewing channel where we share tips, tricks, and tutorials to help you on your sewing journey. I'm Kate, and today we are taking the Melbourne and hacking it to be breastfeeding friendly. This pattern has a nice fitted bodice with a kind of a baby doll style where it curves up at the empire waist and has a nice gathered skirt on it. You have 3 different bodice options, so you can have a crew neck, a scoop neck, or a crossover front bodice. These options made it super easy to hack into a breastfeeding shirt or a nursing shirt, so let's find out how we did that. I'm using the scoop front bodice over top of the cross body or the wrap style top. You could also use the crew neck in place of the scoop neck. So the idea is that we will lift up the scoop neck bodice, and then underneath we'll have the crossover body that we can then pull to the side to feed the babies. So we do need to make some minor adjustments to the pattern to do this. I'm going to show you what I did in Inkscape if you're using a projector. If you are doing this the old-fashioned way with paper and pencil, it's the same kind of thing. Obviously, you're just going to need to use paper and scissors and tape instead of software. So I'm choosing to straighten out that seam where the skirt connects to the bodice. This is just a personal preference. I think it would be fine if you kept it curved. So I'm doing that, and in doing so then I need to bring down the line of the front bodices. We also need to take whatever is going to be our outer bodice piece, so in my case the scoop neck, and I'm going to extend the length of it by 2 inches. This is going to allow for a 1-inch hem on it, as well as a 1-inch extension past the seam of the top. I also did a slight modification on the crossover pieces. If you have a fuller breast and you want this to be more or less, you can definitely adapt it as needed. So now I'm going to take you into Inkscape and show you exactly what I did.
Alright, so this is Inkscape, and I'm not going to go into like how to use Inkscape because if you're here to understand this, you should already know how to use Inkscape. But basically we are going to be using the back bodice piece, the front crossover piece, the front scoop neck piece, the 2 skirt pieces, and then the 2 neckband pieces. So what I'm going to end up doing is moving all the ones out of the way that we're not going to be altering. So the 2 neckband pieces we don't need to alter, the sleeve piece we don't need to alter, the back bodice piece we won't be altering, and the back skirt we won't be altering. So we're just going to be altering the front skirt and then the 2 front bodice pieces. So what I'm doing to do that is I'm dragging a line down from the grid to mark my parallel line here. So this is perpendicular to the fold line, and that's where I want our new line to be. I want to get rid of this curve, so we're going to make this straight across. So the skirt is pretty easy to do. I am breaking apart that line. I say it's easy, but I don't know, for some reason it never wants to work for me. You could definitely just trace this, but I'm just making a line there, breaking that apart with a node, and then getting rid of that top curve portion. And that's all we need to do on that piece. Then we're going to move to the front crossover piece. So we can, I'm moving it up to kind of line it up with that, to line it up with the skirt piece. And then you can see I'm just going to drag that bottom down, but because I want to keep the curve, you know, relatively the same, I'm actually going to duplicate this, and then I can see where the original is and where my new line is going to be. You can also adjust the curve here if you want to have more coverage or less. And then we're just going to draw a straight line from the side seam over to the curve, over to the end of the center front. And now for the scoop neck front, I'm going to extend that center front fold line, and if you just drag this line, it should stay where it's supposed to in terms of perpendicular. So I'm just dragging it down to that line because that's kind of my parallel line, like I already said. And then I can just draw a straight line from the side seam to that new seam and get rid of the original curved bottom piece there. And we are going to actually extend this by 2 inches, and let me show you how we do that. So what I'm doing here is I'm drawing a rectangle to show me where, how long I want this to be. So I want to extend it by 2 inches. So I'm setting this rectangle to be 2 inches tall. And then I know that that's how long I'm going to extend it. So I can again drag down that center fold line. And then I'm going to do the side seam. Now this can kind of get tricky here because, I'm going to then drag down the bottom line because it's going to stay about the same, but I'm going to drag it down there and we'll change it a little bit after. And then the side seam. So this can get tricky because it doesn't want to follow the same angle. So what I'm doing is just making sure that it's actually not going to be smaller than the original. I want it to be the same, or it ends up being a little bit bigger. And then so to do that, I'm duplicating and then dragging that line down to our new line. And as you can see, I'm only going 1 inch here. So I've made another rectangle and I went to 1 inch because I want to have the hem be symmetrical, if that makes sense. So it's like mirrored so that when it flips up, I have enough on the edge there to hem it. So I'm actually going to do that by flipping this line to make it the same but mirrored as the side seam line, and then that gives me my angle for the hem, if that makes sense and you're following that. And that's it. So then I can, arrange things here so that they're going to fit nicely, save it, and then save it as a PDF, and then I can project it to cut out the fabric. And you might be wondering if we need to change the neckband for the crossover part of the bodice. We do not. You can make it longer if you want. You would think that because we extended that bodice down further that you might need that, but because we're not using the back part of the bodice with that neckband, it's not necessary. You'll have enough fabric there to do the additions that we did. So that's it for Inkscape, and now we can get to the making of the actual shirt.
Before we get to the construction, I did just want to say, if you are enjoying this video, if you're happy to have some nursing hacks, or if you just like all kinds of construction content, give this video a big thumbs up so we know to make more stuff like this. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on future videos. So in the end, the pieces that we need for this are the So our first step in constructing this is to actually prepare our front bodice pieces before we sew any of the larger pieces together. So we're going to start with the crossover body. Take your long crossover body neckband piece. Because we extended that crossover body down to be straightened out at that pierced seam, we would normally need to extend the neckband piece as well. However, because this isn't going around the back of the bodice, you should be okay just with the piece that's given. So the first thing we're going to do is prep our two front bodice pieces. So take your crossover body pieces, the two of them, and we're going to cut our neckband piece in half and then attach it to each of these crossover pieces, kind of just making sure that you are giving some tension but not like a ton of tension. And you want to make sure you are only stretching the neckband piece. So go ahead and attach those two together. And then those pieces are ready to be sewn up. For the outer front bodice piece, we need to hem that extension. So remember, we added 2 inches so that we could have a 1-inch hem and then a 1-inch extension. So we're going to fold this up by 1 inch and then hem it. And then we can go ahead and attach these at the shoulder seams to the back bodice. Now, I am doing this kind of as a sandwich method to hide the seam once it's worn. So we are going to lay down the front bodice piece right side up. This is our outer bodice piece, so the scoop neck. Then we lay our back bodice piece right side down on top of that, like you would normally do for any shirt. And then we're going to take our 2 crossover pieces and lay them down wrong side down, right side up. So the wrong side of these crossover pieces will be touching the wrong side of the back bodice. So we're going to lay those down nicely and attach the 3 layers at both shoulder seams. Now we can press that all nice, and you see when we open it up, that seam is actually hidden inside, so it's not rubbing on the shoulders or showing or anything like that. So now the next step is to baste these crossover pieces. So we're going to take this, flip it over, so we have our front bodice piece laying right side down. Then we're going to take our crossover pieces, and this is where you need to decide which side you want on top. Really doesn't matter, that's personal preference. We're going to line up the arm size, because we did not alter the arm size of anything, so those will be the same. And we can kind of line up the side seam too, because they're virtually the same. And we're just going to lay this out flat, and we'll do the same on this bodice. And just lay everything as flat as you can. It's a little bit tricky because we were pulling here, but we're going to lay it kind of as flat as we can here, having them overlap. And we're gonna try and make sure that our ends line up here, so that they line up nice like that, and that'll just kind of help keep things taut. And we're going to clip along there There probably is pattern markings for this, so you know, if you did that, then you can follow those. So we're just gonna clip those. And then we're gonna baste across, just across there, so not the front bodice, just the crossover bodice part there. I'm gonna baste that and come back. Now we can open it up and we're going to attach our skirts. As you'll see, the skirt pieces are wider than the bodice pieces, so we need to gather them. The way I like to gather is to run 2 rows of basting stitches, one inside the seam allowance, one outside. So for this instance, I'm gonna do one at 1/4 inch and one at 1/2 inch. Run those along the length of the skirt. Then I like to, before I do that, I do like to find the halfway point of the skirt and the bodice so that it's easier to gather things up. Once I have my basting stitches ran, then it's just a matter of gathering the skirt piece, distributing the gathers nicely, matching up those center pieces with the bodice, clipping it all together and sewing it together. And you're going to repeat that step on both the front and back bodice. Now we can go ahead and attach our sleeves. Make sure you are attaching the back of the sleeve to the back of the bodice because the sleeve is not symmetrical. Now, while everything's still open, I do like to do a memory hem. This just means we're pressing up the hem allowance now while everything is flat, so we're not fighting with a circle once it's time to hem. We can then attach our side seams. So we're going to lay everything together, right sides together, making sure that that crossover bodice piece is on the front of the garment, not the back. And we're going to lay everything nice and flat and sew up that side seam. You might be wondering, what do I do with the overlap bodice or the outer bodice? We still lay it nice and flat, kind of make sure that your side seams are clipped nicely. Line up the arm side. Because we did not alter the arm side, we are able to use that kind of as our guiding point to make things lie nice and flat. So once that's all lined up, you should have an overlap on the outer bodice. Yes, this is going to look like it doesn't quite line up with the back bodice, but that's the way it is. But we have to choose function over looks in this case. Otherwise, you would have to do a lot of adapting to the back and make some notches and things like that. Things that are just not worth it in my opinion. So lay this nicely. If you have your outer bodice lined up nicely in the side seam, you shouldn't have to stretch anything and it should lay nice and flat when it's worn. Then you can go ahead and sew that side seam up. I like to go from the bottom and sew up and all the way out to the end of the sleeve. All that's left to do now is to add our neckband and hem the garment. So for the neckband, you might be kind of confused when we're adding it on. I have everything quartered here and added and clipped on. I'm just going to show you how we're going to approach this shoulder seam where we have the crossover bodice. Basically, we're just going to lay things out nicely once again and just kind of catch the edge of that under bodice piece, the overlapping bodice, so that everything is secured there with the neckband and nothing's going to be flopping around. Then just hem your bottom of your skirt and the two sleeves and go and try it out. Thank you so much for watching this video. Go ahead and leave us a comment down below if you are going to be trying this out. We would love to see it. Make sure you tag us on social media so we can check it out. Thanks again for watching, and I cannot wait to see what you create. Bye!